Hey everybody, welcome to Houston. We have a problem. This is Livecast 20. Whoa! Okay, I haven't had a chance to actually go through the chat yet. People were blowing up my DMs while I was getting ready for the show. I don't have a set intro for today. Basically, stuff's pushing a little green. Crypto's going bonkers. Tesla, I have the feeling that Elon Musk is just pumping and dumping crypto at this point because he's like, oh, Dogecoin's the best. And then he says, no, Bitcoin's the best. No, Bitcoin sucks. No, Bitcoin's awesome again. It goes the price. So, yeah, there's been some more digging into the SFTs. It's Rule 803 and Rule 010. I think the initial assessment of it sort of being like a backdoor way to liquidate hedge funds is pretty accurate. Basically, imagine your hedge fund, you're leveraged 30 times what your assets are, and you get margin called, and you default on that margin, and they're forced to liquidate you. So the options are your prime broker sells everything you have to the open market and floods the market with all these blue chips and decent and treasury bonds and whatever else are your prime movers, right? So that will depress the price of those stocks. Or you can have a different financial institution give a loan. It's SFT, and the defaulting hedge fund will give all their assets to whoever gives them the loan, and then they'll use that to pay whatever their margin is. Here's the thing, is that if they're leveraged 30 times to what their assets are, that loan clears them out of all their hard assets and only pays off a fraction of what their obligations are. So they're going to default again on that loan to whatever institution gave them that money. And so it's a sneaky way of essentially doing no bid, what's the word I want to use? Like no bid acquisition of all those assets without those assets hitting the market and depressing the price. So it's a sneaky way of kind of dark pooling all those assets. And I think it's a pretty brilliant idea by the clearinghouses to somewhat keep a cascade of a chain reaction of collapsing blue chip prices, which would cause other hedge funds that would be on the cusp from getting margin called. So it's a pretty smart compartmentalization on their part, and to essentially trade that stuff via dark pool. Dr. Stonk asks, will HIG tank from Yellen restricting bond sales? I don't know. I think HYG, specifically HYG is junk bonds for commercial junk bonds, right? Corporate junk bonds. HYG is tied directly to basically the Dow. And if the Dow tanks, HYG tanks. Because that means a whole bunch of big companies have a bunch of big loans, probably won't be in position to pay back those loans, or those bonds. So I'd have to see if that would, if Yellen restricting federal bonds translates to bond problems in the corporate market. I don't know. We'll have to look into that, Dr. Stonk. Thank you for that question. Mark Tran, Houston, in regards to GME MOAS, Reddit seems to believe that 30 million is absolute obtainable floor. Is 30 million a share something we should hold out for? I don't know. I mean, people 6 months ago it was $100,000 a share. 5 months ago, $1 million a share. 4 months ago, $10 million a share. So the floor is whatever the floor is. I was explaining to somebody in the comments on the previous video that, I said I was going to probably sell my first share at 100,000 and then work my way up. So by share 7, if I sell 50% premium over the previous share, by share 7, I'm selling a share over $1 million. By share 14, I'm selling shares over $19 million. So you can definitely work your way up there and get to ridiculous land. Now, Whether we'll all see 30 million, I doubt it. I think a lot of people who have a lot of shares will see the riches and just be like, you know what, I'm out. Because that's kind of how people work psychologically. It's very hard to get large groups of people to behave in the exact fashion you want when there's this much money on the line. So I'm sure somebody will probably sell a share or two at 30 million or more. I'm not sure that there's going to be a significant portion of us who will get to do that. Because remember, the peak's the peak. It's the tippy top, and the area under that curve is small. So everyone else is going to be at the bottom part of that pyramid, or bell graph, or whatever you want to call it. So I don't know if the floor really is going to be 30 million for everyone, or if it's going to be a few people that achieve that and beyond. Okay, let's see here. Josh Walker, hey Houston, what do you think is the likelihood that super Earths would have plate tectonics like we know it on Earth? Do you think thicker plates or thinner? That's interesting. So super Earths are more massive planets that are inside of the Goldilocks zone around different stars. The Goldilocks zone is where water can exist in its three states, and it's vapor, liquid, and solid states. So like Earth, we've got water vapor atmosphere, we've got rivers and lakes and oceans, and we've got ice caps. And that's where creatures like us do really well. We do really well in Goldilocks zones, just right, that are a certain distance from their stars, not too hot, not too cold. And super Earths are more massive rocky planets that are in this zone. I think you need to have liquid water to have plate tectonics. I think that's one of the things that if you don't have liquid water, I don't think you can have tectonics like we do with Earth. Like there are tectonics on Venus, but that is more like there's a pudding skin around a ball of goo, and magma is constantly just flowing out and covering it all over again. So once it covers so much, the bottom part melts away and then gets recharged. Here on Earth, we've got plates that smash into each other and dive and make mountains and separate and do all these weird things. It's kind of like ice tubs or ice cubes floating around a bathtub. They just kind of bonk into each other and do their thing. These super Earths will have an incredible amount of gravity. You get to super Earths that are like twice our diameter. You're probably looking at 4 or 5 times the gravity, and that I'm not sure exactly how that would change things. If you have like a denser lithosphere, a denser mantle, I'd be really curious to figure. I have to do some math on that and see. But I do think it's possible for them to have plate tectonics, especially if they have continents and oceans. And it's kind of a happy medium. Like if it was just an ocean planet, I think those tectonics are hard to come by because you need to be able to differentiate the material between heavy material and lighter material, and you kind of need a landmass outside of the water to do a lot of that. I know it sounds weird, but when an ocean plate dives underneath a continental plate and you get a bunch of volcanoes, that magma down here, silicates precipitate out much more easily than the other materials inside of that oceanic rock. And so what happens is as this dives down, it releases a whole bunch of silica, and you get really silica-rich lavas, rhyolites and granitic lavas. And that's the light, fluffy rock that makes up the continents. And it builds up and builds up and builds up, and you get a whole bunch of these silica-rich rocks, whereas the ocean rocks are not very silica-rich. And so the ocean classifies, basically, all that water that gets pulled down with the plate kind of classifies that silica out, and you get more silica-rich rocks. And if you have nothing but oceanic plates covered in a giant ocean, I'm not sure what would dive under something else to kind of make that happen. So, you gave me a question I don't quite have the answer to. I have to think about that. Maybe talk to some other planet nerds and see what they think. But man, Josh Walker, good question. Excellent question. Keep asking questions like that. Those type of questions that get someone a PhD. So if you answer that question, you got yourself one hell of a PhD. All right. Citadel wants to know when the Metamaterials dividend is. I have no clue. Whenever they finish selling their oil patches. So, I mean, we can keep asking, but we're not going to know that until then. Always on asks, hey, Mr. Wade, could you explain what in the blue hell is going on with Metamaterials? Thanks, fella. Yes, Metamaterials, we're kind of in this limbo waiting for the T35 date. I mean, you guys are all aware, Torchlight merged with Canadian company Metamaterials, boom, became Metamaterials on the NASDAQ. Torchlight issued preferred shares of stock for everyone to own their stock right before the merger. And those preferred shares of stock are placeholders for when they finally finish selling off all their oil assets, and then they're going to give everybody a cash dividend who has those preferred shares of stock in their accounts. Okay, when you do a merger like this, the CUSIP changes, which is the individual identification number for the stock. It's like the UPC on the stock. And generally, there's a recall of shares by institutions where they have lent out their shares when there's a CUSIP change. So not only is there a CUSIP change of the NASDAQ stock, but the Canadian stock no longer exists. It all moved to the NASDAQ. And in the weeks before the merger, both Torchlight and Metamaterials got shorted like crazy. And the price still spiked a whole bunch as there was a big push because everyone realized the dividend might be more significant. And the price of these stocks went high. I think it was $11 for Metamaterial. Sorry, $21 for Metamaterial and $11 for Torchlight. And since then, it's just been kind of like this low trading limbo and the price has steadily come down. It's now just under $4, I think. But the T35 date, which is the you must provide the shares that you've shorted or else date, especially since these things are all, the CUSIP has changed, is someone put on the last show, August 16th, I believe. So we may see some weird stuff happen in the week leading up to August 16th, just like we saw it out of, none of us saw it coming, was Newegg go from like $4 to $77 in just a matter of days as a result of their CUSIP change when they had a merger. So we're waiting. We just sit around and wait. That's kind of what we have to do, because while we may own a whole bunch of their stock, we're not the power players in this. And the power players are the ones that basically duke this thing out, and we might like catch a tooth or something and as a souvenir. And that's kind of where we are. Okay. Oh, shoot. I wanted to thank people who have joined the Patreon. I always forget to... I'm so bad at like pumping myself. Thank you, everybody who's joined the Patreon. I hope to bring more stuff and start doing more recorded shows. This quarter ends sometime in next month, and I should have some more time for like 6 weeks to get stuff done before I start my next round of classes. And I'm going to try and film a lot of stuff while I'm in Hawaii, because there's a lot of cool geological features. I'll be going to the lava. I'll be doing tours of the giant telescopes. We'll go jump off cliffs, and we'll interview some people to do some really cool jobs. Some people to do like science education, do like farm weird things like palm heart or tea, or I'll see who else can chat with me. Do volcano tours. Our telescope operators from some of the largest telescopes in the world. So I'm going to try and see all my friends and do shows with each one of them and kind of talk about what they do. And that's a great way to make traveling to a friend's wedding a nice big tax write-off. Yeah, expenses, baby. So look forward to that. And any of those recorded videos, the Patreon people will get them first. And yeah, so I think I always got to remember to try and plug myself. I always forget that stuff. Cancel Bubble asks, what other shorted stocks do you recommend we take a look at? I've heard you mention Metamaterial before. How would you rate that compared to GME or AMC? Metamaterial wasn't even on my radar as a shorted stock. I just thought they were doing cool stuff, and then saw that Torchlight was going to offer a cash dividend. So I bought months and months and months ago, just thinking that, maybe I'll get $1 a share for my Metamaterial stock or my Torchlight stock. And then it started getting shorted like nuts, and became a squeeze. And I honestly hadn't even considered it as a squeeze potential, which is kind of where we are. There's a link. I need to put it. I'll put it in the description. Somebody DM me a link that basically took a chart of all the stocks that had squeezes at the end of January, or the OTC stocks that had the little squeezes at the beginning of February. They kind of one followed the other. After the show, I'll post it in the description for this video, and that'll give you an idea of what stocks might be shorted and kind of in the same boat as AMC and GME and all the other meme stocks. Okay. This is from Chris Taylor, PhD Q2. In prior cast, did you mention going to catch a workout, and on another occasion being buff like Rollins? How's your training going? What's your routine? Lift, cardio? I don't do supplements. So basically I just do what I did in college, which is I go and work myself to complete exhaustion. And it's, we're a couple weeks into getting buff, and we're getting there. I have I think it's like a type 3 body. Is that what the skinny bodies are? I can't remember. Type 1 is like big muscle bound freaks. I'm not one of those. I'm a lean fellow. But I basically do legs one day, upper body the next, then I do abs and core both days. And that's kind of my routine. I don't run like I used to in college. As a college baseball pitcher, coaches don't really know what to do with you, because once you've thrown your 30 or 40 pitches, they're like, well, go run 10 miles while I do work with the real baseball players. And so as pitchers, we just go run. And I just fucking hate running. I could run, and I could do my 10 miles at a decent time, and I hated every second of it. So when I no longer was required to run anymore, I didn't really do that long distance running. I love like playing basketball or soccer and sprinting around a field, but I just don't like running for the sake of running. So instead, mostly I take this little freak for big long walks. We do 5 or 10 miles a day. Usually in the evening, I'll meet up with a sibling or a neighbor, and we'll just go for a nice big walk, and I don't know, go get an ice cream bar or whatever. She loves it. But I don't do supplements. I don't do protein shakes. Seriously, don't do protein shakes. Don't take whey protein, all that stuff. If you want colon cancer, it's a great way to get it. And your body has a hard time processing all that stuff, and you just become this like bloated creature. So don't get ass cancer by taking a bunch of creatine and whey powder. It's not good. Just go work out, eat healthy-ish. Summertime, I always like get a little skinnier in the summertime, simply because I eat way too much fruit when it's in season. Like last night, I ate an entire cantaloupe. Just a giant cantaloupe. I was like, oh, I'll just have a slice, and I just ate the whole thing in like 10 minutes. So, it's a great way to keep yourself lubricated. So yeah. But in a couple of months, I will be, it's my body type, I will look like a freak of nature. And I don't know how long my metabolism is going to keep up that way, because I'm 40 now. So everyone told me, well, when you turn 25, your metabolism will slow down. Or when you turn 35, when you turn 40, it just hasn't quite happened yet. My dad's 84 and rail thin, so yeah, that's my workout routine. I go and I press things, and I pull things, and I push things, and I go across my body with things, and then I do squats and all those things, and until basically I want to either shit myself or barf and drink a lot of water, and I go home and complain to anyone who will listen to me about how sore I am. That's my workout routine. Okay, Preston Becker. Because short hedge funds are manipulating GME through dark pools, is it possible for them to day trade GME to cover FTDs so that this goes on forever? It is possible, but I don't think we're seeing any evidence of them actually covering. Because covering means they have the stock and they give it to someone who they borrowed it from, or they put it in the account that they sold the naked share to. And I don't think we're seeing any evidence of that happening. At most, what we see is them basically pumping the stock, shorting it back down again, pumping the stock, shorting it back down again. And all they're doing is making their position even larger. And, you know, groups like Melvin claim that they were covering, and they didn't. They didn't do any covering. All they did was mask their position with puts and calls and swaps and things like that. But they still lost a fortune, and they're still losing a fortune. So, you know, in order for these groups to cover, they've got to pay so much money for so many shares, and we have the shares. We're not selling them. So they can't get those shares from the dark pool because we have them. The shares that are going around the dark pool are probably mostly synthetic shares, and that just makes the problem deeper for everybody else. So I don't think it's possible for them to do any covering of those FTDs in the dark pools. They can mask those positions. They're not going to be able to close them. And in covering means they basically identified where the share was, but they aren't doing anything about buying it. So Preston, I don't think they can do it. I think all they've managed to do with the dark pools is just dig the hole deeper while manipulating the price. Nick Callis, do you think it's likely that Meta will result in a margin call to clean up the synthetics? I think it is very likely if we get the T35 on the 16th or whenever it is, and they have not ponied up the shares, that we could see margin calls on hedge funds that did that. So, yeah, we're just sitting and waiting. You know, we can think the 16th, but maybe they just reset the FTDs and it just goes all over again. But they didn't do that with Newegg. So if they didn't do it with Newegg, why would they do it with Metamaterial? So, yeah. You know, again, we're the powerless ones. We're just sitting here holding and waiting and holding and waiting and holding. We hold and wait and we watch YouTube videos. Welcome to the life of an ape. YouTube video. Okay. All right. Andrew Stewart, I think you should channel your inner cowboy and rock a pearl snap shirt here soon. Okay. I've got a lot of them. So I will do it. Next show, I will do a pearl snap shirt. How about that? That was the original one. The first interview I did with the Gist, I rocked a pearl snap black shirt with black roses embroidered on it, and man, the internet, half the internet was like, that shirt's rad. The other half the internet was like, that shirt's the most hideous thing I've ever seen. But I love pearl snap shirts. I love it. Especially when you're strong, you can go, raw, and the whole shirt just rips apart. Like women go, oh. Okay. Carlos Zavala asks, how long does a short squeeze scenario usually play out? Thanks, H. Wade, for all the knowledge you share. Well, the short squeezes in the past have taken a while. I think it was, like 8 days for the VW squeeze back in 2008. And that was, they're only shorted a pico amount compared to what could be happening now with these stocks. I think it will take a couple weeks, just because the volume they need is so bonkers that I think it's going to take a couple of weeks, and the sources of money to pay for all these shares might be hard to come by at times. There's a foghorn going off out there. I've kind of described this before. We have to think about how they're going to get money and how they're going to cover these positions or close these positions. And, the hedge fund gets liquidated. Whether their stocks get sold off by the brokerage or whether, they get this SFT loan thing, that money will be used and it'll take care of this much of their entire margin. That's gone. And then the rest of it is a responsibility of the prime brokers or the banks that lent them the margin. And those groups, it won't take long to just drain that to nothing, and they're out of cash. And then it's the insurance policies of the clearinghouses. That won't last long either. That'll get squished to nothing. And while that's happening, the Federal Reserve will probably have to dump a bunch of reserve notes into all these banks and generate the liquidity needed to finish closing those positions out. So each step along the way, there's probably going to be a pause while they try to, move from one person who needs to close their obligations to the next. So we might see a whole bunch of buyer pressure, and then the hedge funds run out of money, and it stagnates or drops for a while, and then the banks take over until they run out of money, and then the clearinghouse takes over until they run out of money, and then cash infusion happens from the Federal Reserve. So we might see it do this for days while they're trying to close out all those positions. And then each night, when the clearinghouse balances the books, they're going to be taking those shares and going, okay, synthetic, delete, real share, replace synthetic, synthetic, delete, real share, replace synthetic. And they'll have an idea of, okay, we cleared 50 million shares today. We need to go get more. And the next day they buy, and may run out of cash and have to wait for another infusion. And then, they go, okay, we cleared 65 million shares today. Okay. Next day, buy. So we can see it probably bouncing around quite a bit as each institution feeds into the system. And what the hedge funds want is they want, these margin calls to be extended over time. And so the squeeze becomes this very long, drawn out curve as this hedge fund gets margin called, then 6 days later this one, and then 2 weeks later this one. What we want is for hedge fund to get margin called, and then it causes a chain reaction. All of a sudden we've got 100 hedge funds all margin called within 48 hours of each other, and the price just goes pew off into space. So that's the world we're dealing in. Will they be able to keep isolating these hedge funds and have them margin called one at a time? Or is it something they're not going to be able to control and everyone's going to get margin called at the same time? Okay. Josh Walker. Happy birthday, Houston. What are the chances we see a supernova in our lifetime? Okay, so the last supernova visible by the naked eye was 1987A in the southern hemisphere in, is it the Small Magellanic Cloud? It's one of the Magellanic Clouds. I can't remember which one. And that was still it just kind of looked like a new star appeared for a while. It wasn't a very bright supernova. Well, star because it's still millions of light years away. But the chances of seeing one visible in our lifetime is probably, let's see, the last big one was 1480s. Was that Crab Nebula? Or was that 12? Oh man, all the dates in my head. Whatever one resulted in the Crab Nebula, which I think was the 1400s. Sorry, I'm going to have to internet this one. Crab Nebula Supernova. 1,000 years ago. Okay, so 1000 AD. I was off. Was when the Crab Nebula went, and that was the last one that people really went, that's a really bright star in the sky. Where'd that come from? And that's about 6,000 light years away, 6,500 light years away. Likely stars that could go supernova that are visible to us right now. Antares, which is the heart of Scorpio. It is the anti-Mars. That is a red supergiant. And those red supergiants are giant stars that are in the last legs. And once they burn enough fuel and the iron core inside gets dense enough, that the static electric, what do you call it? Static degeneration. So degeneracy. That's the word I'm looking for. So if you what can I use an example? All right, I got my rusty trusty baseball here. So if you try to pass your hand through this baseball, it's not going to work. Why? Because the electrons in my hand are meeting electrons of the baseball, and they both are negatively charged, and they don't want to merge. Same thing if you slap a table. There's that weird thinking do you ever actually touch the table? Or is it the electric field of the electrons in your fingers getting near the electric field electrons in the table, and they can no longer, they aren't actually touching. They're just meeting each other, kind of like when you try to push two magnets of the same polarity together. It gets really hard, right? So same thing happens when you're stacking a bunch of stuff in the core of a star. And for those of you who don't know how stars do their thing, it's through fusion. So I wish I had another baseball I could play with. So I could smash two baseballs together. Do I have another baseball in here? I don't have another baseball. My fist baseball. So there's a whole bunch of heat and pressure because it got gravity pulling in insanely. And these stars are gigantic. Their gravitational wells are huge. And these things are flying around, bouncing off each other. And they can reach speeds that are so great that they overcome the electrons while keeping them apart, and they merge and they fuse. And they might make, they initially go from two helium atoms smashed together and make, two hydrogen atoms smashed together and make a helium atom. And when that helium core gets so big, the helium starts smashing together and making things like carbon. And the carbon starts smashing together and making things like oxygen, nitrogen. And then those start smashing together and make neon, and neon smashes together, and it works its way up to iron. And eventually you get this iron core, and you have all of these iron atoms that are just stuck, squished against each other, and the electron degeneracy doesn't want them to merge. But gravity gets stronger and stronger and stronger the more iron that gets packed in there, and eventually it gets so strong that the iron bloop, merges, and the entire star, overcomes that distance that's keeping the atoms apart, and the whole thing goes and collapses down. And as it collapses down, all the material on the outside rushes in and superheats and fuses all at once. So about 10% of the star's mass will fuse in basically an instant, and then just a giant explosion. That's your supernova. And the supernovas means one star can equal the entire output of a whole galaxy for a month. So imagine you've got 250 billion stars in a galaxy, and one star is just as bright as all 250 billion of those other stars put together. The explosion is huge, and that explosion rockets through space, and all those heavy materials that were formed inside that star blast outwards. And so all the materials heavier than basically hydrogen or helium came from the cores of these dead stars when they went supernova, boom, out in the universe. So my glasses, they're made out of titanium. This shirt's made of cotton. Made of cotton, which is made of carbon. I'm made of carbon. The desk is made of carbon. My tripod is made of aluminum. All that material came from these dead stars. So, when Carl Sagan says, we are nothing but stardust, we are nothing but stardust. And so that blast outwards will cause clouds of gas to compress, because, shock wave. And if they compress enough, then they'll want to form their own star systems. And we kind of talked about how those planets and things, stars, and formed other shows. And then the whole process begins all over again. Once those clouds collapse into a bunch of stars, a whole bunch of big stars form, they explode, shoot out material, and so on. Well, if a star goes supernova close enough to you, it can be an extinction level event. Basically, within 100 light years or so, there's so much radiation, so much neutron flux, that it will just sanitize the entire surface of a planet. So if we had someone go supernova near us within 100 light years, we would cease to exist. We would just watch each other just melt from the neutron flux. And the heat would be incredible, because imagine now you got an entire galaxy worth of light beaming down on you for a month. So anyways, Antares is one that could go supernova. Betelgeuse, which is the right shoulder of Orion, I believe. Right shoulder? Left shoulder. One of the shoulders of Orion. Betelgeuse is a crazy star. It's about 500 light years away, and it's the only star we can see as a disk. That's how big it is. It's the equivalent of, if you put Betelgeuse where our sun is, the envelope, the outward edges of the atmosphere of that star will be past Jupiter. It's over 1 billion miles across. One star, 1 billion miles across. And it's a likely candidate to go supernova. The problem is that the time scales of which these things operate are really big. And a supergiant star, like a big giant hot star that's blue and doesn't live very long, it might only live 10 million years as a blue giant. And then it might do 1 million years as a super red giant. Well, we only live for 80 to 100 years. So where in that million years of it being a super giant, super red giant, are we to have the likelihood of seeing it go supernova? And you get about one supernova per 100 years per galaxy. So, we can see about half the galaxy from our point of view. The other half is masked on the other side, so we can't see the other half of the galaxy. So, we got a 1 in 200 chance of seeing a supernova in our galaxy, I guess. 1 in 200 year chance. That's a long way of explaining supernovas and the chance of seeing one naked eye. But we, through a telescope, can see supernovas all the time across the universe because there's 300 billion galaxies out there. So whenever we point our telescopes at something, we can always see a supernova going off somewhere because there's just so many galaxies. And we use those supernovas to kind of calculate how far away those galaxies are, because there's a certain supernova called a type 2 supernova that's the result of a collapsed white dwarf. And oh god, we're getting into a whole class of astronomy here. So if you have a binary star system and you got a star about the size of our own sun, it doesn't explode. It just kind of, the envelope just kind of blows away, and then you're left with the carbon core. And if you got a binary star, that binary star goes giant, gas will start falling on the white dwarf, and you get these little novas, little explosions as gas falls on the white dwarf. Well, if enough gas falls on the white dwarf, you can get to a point where that core will collapse. And that core collapses at about 1.4 times the mass of our own sun. So that's be a pretty big core. And that's called the Chandrasekhar limit. Chandrasekhar was a physicist who calculated like how big does it need to be to collapse a core and make a neutron star. And it's the same collapse at the same mass every single time. So whenever they explode in supernova, they give off the same exact amount of light, for the same duration of time. And so when we see those type 2 supernovas all over the universe, we know how bright they should be, and therefore we can calculate how far away a galaxy is every single time. It's called a standard candle. Shit, I'm totally getting off the rails here. I hope I answered your question. The likelihood of seeing a supernova in your lifetime in the Milky Way is about 1 in 200 years. There you go. Okay. All right. I totally blew past a couple of super chats here. Leaky Mountain. Oh, there's Jake. I was going to... there we go. I added Jake as a mod here. Oh, Jake is telling me there's no lava to see at the moment up on Kilauea. Ah, nuts. All right. Darn. Okay. Well, we got a month. We got a month for it to start farting out some lava again. Every time I go to Hawaii, Mount St. Helens erupts. Every time I leave Hawaii, there's a summit eruption at Kilauea. And so I'm just always missing the boat on this guy. Although I have been there for a couple of good lava flows out to the ocean. But no summit eruptions, which is I've always wanted to see a summit eruption. Okay. Just from Dax, at what point do you know the squeeze is over? I think when bypressure just vanishes. We'll see bypressure be absolutely nuts as these trading computers are trying to clear all their positions. But we might see bypressure drop a few times as they reset, where their funding's coming from. But ultimately, I think we'll just see bypressure just end and the price just crash. And everyone goes, oh, I guess it's over. I guess these positions are all closed. I don't know if they would announce it. If they say, hey, we're done buying, that's it. Or if we'll have to rely on the fact the volume just disappears and doesn't recover. So that's just from Dax. I think that's how we find out if the squeeze is over. Fabian Garcia. Oh, thank you, Fabian. Yes. Will the selling pressure of the apes prevent the MOAS from reaching such high prices mentioned? It's possible. You have to imagine that not everybody is going to be able to hold forever, and that when they open up their brokerage account and they see how much it's worth, and they might do the math in their head and go, "I'm done." Boop. And it's very likely that they're going to do that. especially people that got in early and have thousands and thousands of shares. The how effortless it would be to dump it all is going to be there. So I don't want to like tell everyone, hey, we're all going to be gajillionaires, because people will just be like, all right, I have $100 million in my account. I never have to think about anything ever again. I'm going to go hang out with supermodels on my private yacht. Done. So that could possibly prevent some MOAS from reaching super high prices. But at the same time, they essentially have to buy every legit share like 5 to 10 times. So there's a lot of buying that has to happen. So even if someone sells, boom, I'm selling all my shares at 50K or 5K or whatever, that will only cover a little bit of the position. And there's still, 500 million shares to go. So that's where we are on that, I think. Josh Pet Pals, Tennessee. Hey there, Houston. Thanks again, brother. Where did you hear your information about the Lambda variant? I tried to look it up this weekend and could not find anything factual. Oh man, I'll have to find some stuff. It's was it Lambda and Gamma, I think, are the ones. Is it Epsilon too? They're all in South America. I'll have to find. I'll try to find it and put it in the thing. Let me see here. Lambda article. I think I mentioned this last time. I've got a friend in Ecuador that has the Gamma variant right now, and he's vaccinated and just not happy. He is having a hard time. It's been 2 weeks, still can't breathe very well. Going up a flight of stairs is just like not going to happen type issues. Kind of like the long haul people that have COVID. So Josh, I'll try to find an article for you, and I'll post it in the descriptor if I remember. Jack, Houston, I have a degree in engineering. Fancy teaming up with other apes post-mass to mine space and become new super elite. Let's do it. I've had people say, hey, let's invest in a space company. I would love to do a space company. That's pretty much the entire reason I got the degrees I got. I just didn't have the family money that could help me create giant.com so that I could fund my space company. I tried. I was just born like a year or two too late to really get the .com bubble before it burst. But Jack, yeah, let's do it. Let's make a space company. Someone had, what was the name that they had said that was really funny? Oh, I can't remember. It's in the chat somewhere. Okay. It's Jack. Rubet Guiman. I think I say that right. Robut Guiman. Is it true that the magnetic poles are shifting and that by 2049 or 46 we are going to have a massive tsunami that will wipe out the West Coast? The poles are shifting. I don't think it's going to result in any tsunamis. So inside the Earth, there's if my hands are the Earth, there's a molten core on the inside, and that core is a whole bunch of molten metal, basically. A whole bunch of iron, nickel, uranium, gold, just a whole bunch of metal in there. And as the Earth rotates, the core basically rotates with it. It might lag a little bit behind the Earth, but if you have a whole bunch of spinning hot metal with free electrons going around, you create a magnetic field, because a moving charge makes a magnetic field, and a moving magnetic field makes an electric charge. The thing is that the Earth wobbles and the goo inside wobbles, and it can wobble to the point where it flips. And when it does so, what is now the North Pole becomes the South Pole, and what is now the South Pole becomes the North Pole, and the whole thing is different. And it happens in a cycle of about 60 to 100,000 years for the Earth, is when we get that pole flip. It shouldn't affect the oceans. What it should do is it will probably have, there'll probably be a moment of time where the Van Allen belts, the big magnetic fields that protect the Earth from really gnarly cosmic rays, might weaken a whole bunch. So put on your SPF 900 and, I don't know, a lead umbrella. But it wouldn't have any effect on the oceans themselves and cause tsunamis. that's not really how that works. So don't worry about the tsunamis. Just worry about, you know, making sure you don't get the weird cancers from our magnetic fields getting weakened for a while. Okay. Dr. Stonk, can you explain the moon wobble? Is it bad for us? Yeah. The moon wobble itself isn't bad for us. The problem is that we get higher high tides and lower low tides when the moon wobbles in a certain position. And due to the ocean levels rising, those tides will be exacerbated now. So coastal cities, especially coastal cities that are closer to the tropics, will find themselves much more inundated with high tides than they've ever expected before. So imagine cities like Miami having a lot more tidal flooding days. So what happens is you have the Earth and you have the Moon, and the Moon takes 28 days to go around the Earth. Well, the Moon itself, it's plain wobble. So it takes about 18 years for it to do like a full wobble as it goes through, 18.6 years. And that's how like eclipse patterns, about 18.6 years for the sun and moon, because the moon will pass in front of the sun a certain spot every 18.6 years because of that wobble. It's a normal thing. It's not like unknown to science. We know that there's 18.6 year wobble to the moon's orbit. And you'll notice at times of the year that, like, oh, hey, the moon is rising way north of me than I'm used to. And another time of the year, it's rising really far to the south. That is due to the Earth's own tilt and wobble of the moon. But like the bad thing isn't the moon's wobble. The bad thing is that we're putting 3.3 millimeters or more water on top of the ocean every single year, and the ocean level's rising. So those high tides are going to get gnarlier every single time. So when they say the 2030s, the moon wobble is going to cause flooding, no, it's really the humans melting ice causing flooding. Josh Pierce sent you a second question, but also here's a third. Would there be any point to having any kind of exercise programs in space? Would it be easier? Oh no, they exercise like crazy in space. Basically, you got people running like marathons every single day, because without using your muscles in space, without having the normal force of gravity pulling down in your core, keeping your body upright and your spine compressed, your muscles atrophy really quickly. So they do all sorts of weird resistance training with, like, they'll put rubber bands on themselves and run on treadmills to like simulate being under a gravitational force. You'll have them do like really strange resistance training, trying to push and pull things and just build up muscle. And also having that force act upon you helps keep bone density going. So they exercise like mad in space. If they didn't, especially in like long term and they're in the space station for months or a year, if they didn't do any exercise whatsoever, they would probably return to Earth completely broken, maybe never be able to walk again, bone fractures, all sorts of gnarly stuff. So they make sure astronauts exercise a ton while they're in space. So you definitely need to do it a lot. Okay, let me see if I can find your second question here. There you go. Here he is again. Not that you could give us any exact information, but how big do you think the differential is between GME and AMC? A lot of people seem to think GME will fly much higher. I think GME will fly higher, mainly because they're shorted at least 500 million shares or more, and there's only 50 or so million shares available in the float, which essentially means they have to buy each share 10 times. I don't think AMC is shorted to the same ratio. I don't think, there's 500 million AMC shares. I don't think that there's, 5 billion shares out there for AMC. There could be a lot. I might be wrong. There could be a whole lot just trading around the dark pools I don't know about. But I don't think they've generated the same level of naked synthetics as they did for GME. But so that's why I think, because the pool they can pull from for GME is so much smaller than that of AMC and their 500 million shares. Okay. All right. Whoa, got through a whole bunch of science and finance questions all in one go there. Blah! You guys are making my brain do ping pongs. It's awesome. Okay. Let's see. So I can scroll down on the main chat here again. Okay. Always On says, if the loans, this means SFT stuff from 803 and 010, means retail investors can't buy blue chips on the cheap, so why stay in the crooked market after the squeeze? That's a good point. I mean, that's a lot of people asking themselves that. That's why I think that it's a good idea to invest in these dividend stocks that just give you cash every quarter and just forget whatever the market action is doing. It's a pretty wise way to go. If not, I mean, you can invest in real estate. You can invest in, I don't know, movies. You can go to Hollywood and produce movies. I don't know, whatever you want to do. I do think the blue chips will take a dip no matter what, because with that many margin calls, you're going to get market uncertainty and you're going to get people panic selling. And they're going to be moving to safer investments for when that happens, like gold and stuff like that. But, you know, unless the SEC starts doing some enforcement and we see some rule changes that make it hard to naked short, I do think that once a lot of people get their money, they're going to find other places to store it rather than the stock market. I do think that that's a very reasonable possibility. Always On. This is from Tizanti. Or is it just Zanti or Tizanti? Zanti. What do you think about the China market crash? Are some hedges that short GME long on China? Can this be a MOAS trigger? Oh, did I miss something in the news today about Chinese market? I was spent so Chinese market down. Hong Kong's down. China market meltdown. What's this? What's the date on you? 236 billion spent on market bailout. Oh, that's from years ago. Never mind. Let's see what's in the news here. Hong Kong down. U.S.-China relations getting worse. Chinese stocks stumble. This is a couple days ago. But I think what's happening right now is that people realize the supply chain is messed up, that we've got these spurts of COVID outbreaks happening and shutdowns in different countries at different times. And when you've got a global supply chain and you might need, I don't know, aluminum from Australia to make this thing in China. And if they can't make the thing in China, it can't go in a car in Japan. If it can't go in a car in Japan, it can't be sold at a dealership in Mexico. And so we're seeing like this on-demand production supply chain that we have breaking down under these individual problems that are happening in different countries. And because nobody has one solid COVID response, nobody has the same variants everywhere, and nobody has the same access to medical care and vaccines and everything else, I think we might see a lot of this play out over the next few months. As you know, like Australia's under a big lockdown. When before they had like no cases whatsoever in the country, everyone's going surfing, having a great time, attending movies, and then all of a sudden the Delta variant got there, and Australia's like, shut it down. And we've got, you know, tons of problems in Latin America from the variants there. We've got, you know, England opened up, and the number of cases they have per day are just as high as they were in January when it was an absolute horror show. So I think that has a lot to play with the markets doing their things. And in Hong Kong, Hong Kong's problem is that they are a capitalistic society that's slowly being taken over by a communist system. Not really. China's not that communist. They're more oligarch. But they're slowly removing the power players in Hong Kong and replacing them with people from Beijing. And it's going to make Hong Kong a hard place for people to invest in if they don't have the same risk mitigators they had before in Hong Kong. If the Chinese government at any time can say, mine, people are not going to be likely to invest in Hong Kong at the moment. China's a huge market, and people will invest in China, but they'll do it knowing what the risks are when they invest in China. But if they're investing in Hong Kong, which traditionally didn't have those risks, they'd have to reassess how they're going to send their money over there and what they're going to spend it on. And so that's why I think we're seeing the Hong Kong market slowly dip down as a result. Yeah. So I think I answered your question. Okay. Kyle Castillo, Houston Wade has some huge potential to be the smarter every day of the geology field. Yeah, I like the smarter every day videos. He does some cool physics stuff. If I could spend my days developing nifty physics experiments, I would love to do that too. Okay. Crafted Genius, do you ever think how many short hedge fund interns have watched bits of your videos, or if any are watching now? What would you say to them? Man. Well, ladies and germs who are interns working at various short hedge funds, some of you have no idea what you're getting into. Others of you are complete maniacs and know exactly what you're doing. So, know everything in life's a risk, and that the choices you're making are to possibly make a whole bunch of money off the backs of people. And if you have a conscience, you won't do that, but probably you don't have a conscience. Especially if you move on with this life. There's my speech to short hedge fund interns. Or if you're a short hedge fund intern and you want to make a bunch of money really quick, become a whistleblower to the SEC. There you go. Yeah, whistleblow away. Whatever they recoup, you get a huge kickback from it. Ty Bolak, have you ever been to the Tucson Gems and Minerals Show? I have not, because whenever it goes on, I am stuck teaching, and I can't get the time off in February to go to it. I've wanted to go, and this February was basically the first time ever I had the chance, and COVID. So I want to go to the Tucson show so bad. I would love to go. I've had stuff sell. Like there's a broker I have, and I've had them take things and sell them for me at the show, but I haven't been able to go myself. But I would love to go to the Tucson Mineral Show. It's like what would you call it? It's like the Woodstock of rock shows, the Academy Awards of rock shows. What's that? Consumer Electronics Show of rock shows. Okay. Liz Flair went supernova. Okay. M. Hobson, Houston, you're the personification of the science teacher hero in Andy Weir's, a.k.a. The Martian. New book, Hail Mary Project. You have to read or listen to audiobook. I probably will. I've read most of Andy Weir's books. What was the last one that had to do with the moon and mining? They're mining like aluminum from rocks in the moon and using that to make oxygen. Is it in this room? Might be in the next room. Maybe it was in this room. I can't remember. Is that it? Where is it? Might be in the other room. I can't remember the name of it. But if you look up Andy Weir, you'll find it. He kind of writes his books almost like they're specifically to be screenplay treatments. The way he writes the dialogue and describes things, it's very screenplay-ish. And so he's like, I'll make a bestseller. Someone's gonna pay me a lot of money and they'll make a movie out of this. He's got a pretty good thing. So Hail Mary Project. I'll have to look that one up. Thank you for the recommendation, M. Hobson. Luis Rojas asked me to continue with the class. All right. BC Compton 34. Even through an atmosphere, how so? Does that not give it protection? Or would it pass right through like nothing? Oh, are we talking about like horrible rays from supernovas? Yeah, they won't care about the atmosphere. And the winds from the blast of a nearby supernova will just basically strip our magnetic field for a while and open us up to all sorts of bombardment from galactic cosmic rays and rays from the supernova, like neutron flux, gamma rays, other gnarly things. So if you hear about something going supernova to the point where it like equals the output of our sun at a distance, hide. Just, I don't know, eat a bag of MREs for the next month or two underground. And hopefully you might be able to escape the horrible fallout from that. Oh, hey, William Morgan says AMC just hit $40. Right on. All right. Tesla reported good earnings. Excellent. All right. Oh, Ahia's in here? Oh, Jake is saying Ahia's in here. Ahia, did I miss you, Ahia? I'm so sorry. Ahia, I'm going to be totally doing a show with Ahia and Jake when I get to Hawaii next month. Or what the month is this? I'll get there in September. You guys, we're doing shows together. So, there. All right. BC Compton 34. Do other planets have an atmosphere, protective coat around the planet? Yeah. The two things that will protect the surface of a planet from those galactic cosmic rays are going to be an atmosphere and going to be a magnetic field. So on Mars, they've got a very thin atmosphere, so they can't do much protection, and they have no magnetic field. It's just a giant solid ball of metal, which is their core. It cooled off and froze a long time ago. And so a lot of rays bombard the surface of Mars at all times and will strip DNA if exposed. But there are other planets out there that exist and probably protect very well. Venus, aside from the fact that it's this huge thick atmosphere of CO2 that's a perfect insulator for infrared radiation, not much gets through from space or the sun. And they've got a huge molten core, so they've got a big magnetic field for their size. So there you go. Boss says, I have to be on a show with Stephen Fry. Oh, I'd love to be on a show with Stephen Fry. Holy moly. That guy's awesome. I would love to be on a show with Stephen Fry. Peter Joy wants to know if MySpace will make a comeback. I hope so. I miss MySpace. Yeah. All right. Roger Pell asks, when will we get another comet in the sky easily to see? Not sure. Oftentimes, the comets that make their way to us, we don't see till a couple weeks ahead of time with telescopes. Probably check the Pan-STARRS telescope page. They might have information on that. What the Pan-STARRS telescope does, it's this telescope in Maui. It's got four 1-meter mirrors that work with interferometers, so they all connect into one image. And they do these wide-scale surveys of the sky all night long. Just take a picture, 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 take a picture. And all night, all year, take a picture. And the images go to a supercomputer. The supercomputer lays the images on top of each other, and they look for any star that's moved. And if a star is moved, they go, oh, what's that? And they see if that star is actually an asteroid, a comet, a satellite, an unknown object. And they tried to look at several images of that region and calculate what its orbital pattern might be. And what they're doing is they're looking for near-Earth asteroids that can kill us. They're looking for comets that could kill us. They're also sending that data to groups like Planetary Resources, who are doing these surveys of near-Earth asteroids, trying to figure out which ones are worth money and which ones would be wise for us to mine. Because those near-Earth asteroids are ones that can pass pretty close to the Earth on their orbital patterns. And if they pass pretty close to the Earth, then it doesn't take so much energy to get to that asteroid and start mining it and getting material back and forth between the Earth and the asteroid. So they would be the ones that have info on any comets that are coming. I'm not sure when the next near one would be. We just had one, this past winter, right? That went by pretty close that you could see. I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, they come by every couple of years. We see one. William Morgan, he's kind of saying my exact feeling here. He says he has 10,000 shares, 10,000 per share, he'll be worth $100 million. And he says he seriously would doubt he'd wait for 100,000 per share. I mean, he got 100 million bucks, you got 100 million bucks. You don't have to worry about anything. Your kids don't have to worry about anything. Your grandkids will probably be major assholes at that point. But you're done. You've done it. You've made more money than a human being could ever possibly spend, and you're there. Nick Callis, a hedge fund in England closed down due to GME. Did they do that to avoid having to cover? I think they had to still close their position. They were a small hedge fund. It was only like $400 million in their hedge fund, unlike some of these hedge funds that have like $50-60 billion in them. I can't remember the name of the hedge fund. If someone else has the name, you can Google search it. But they were a small hedge fund that was about $400 million US that were in there. And it wasn't just GME, but other meme stocks that they had taken the wrong bet on, kept being worth too much money. And they're like, you know what? We aren't going to recover from this. So they closed shop. But they still those positions still had to be closed by them before they could close shop. I don't know if you're allowed to post image or links on here. Artivino. All right. Let's see here. Sean Alexander, do you believe in the Big Bang Theory? I don't. I'm a multiverser and think that we had a mitosis of one verse becoming two, which means we had 26 surrounding verses. Well, Sean, I'm not a string theorist, and the string theory is where multiversing came from. There may be multiverses out there, but the tenets of string theory are so problematic in science that it's not even a theory, it's string hypothesis, because every single time somebody has developed an experiment to prove whether string theory's hypotheses are correct, has been wrong. We do know that the universe came from somewhere. It did come in a blomp and exists to this day as a result of exploding outwards. Because we can look back in time, all the way back to basically the fuzz of the Big Bang, when everything was just a hot mess. And that's called the cosmic microwave background radiation. So anywhere we look with our telescopes, everywhere across the universe, past every little galaxy, we look 14.8 billion light years away, we can see this fuzz from the Big Bang. If you have an old cathode ray television, or like old TV from the 80s or 90s, and you turn that sucker on, turn to a station that doesn't exist, you get the of the static, you're looking at the Big Bang. So we know that the universe exploded from somewhere. Now, whether it was from multiverses splitting or whatever, who knows? We don't know the mechanics behind that. We had thought that the universe basically exploded outwards for a while and then started to slow down due to its gravity and then collapsed back in on itself and then did it all over again. So we thought that there was some sort of cycle to exploding outwards and collapsing in. The collapsing in they called the Big Crunch. Think about it as like you throw a baseball in the air, that baseball's going to come back down, right? It leaves your hand at a certain velocity, slows down, stops, and then falls back in. They thought perhaps the universe went whoomp and then slowed down and then fell back in on itself. Well, that all got thrown out the window when in 1998, Alexei Filipenko and the team at UC Berkeley, and then I can't remember the team that was in Australia that also found it. They discovered that the universe did just explode outwards, but it exploded outwards and slowed down for a while, and then about 7 billion years ago started picking up in speed and accelerating outwards. And that's the dark energy. And the dark energy is kind of what's pulling the universe apart at this point. And there's lots of hypotheses about what that is. My senior thesis for my undergraduate was on, basically I did the math equations and reverted the universe back to about 7 billion years ago when gravity pulling in equaled dark energy pushing out. That was the moment that dark energy took over, right? Any time after that 7 billion years, dark energy was more powerful than gravity. So I was able to come up with a mathematical constant for that dark energy and calculate, what the force was between now, dark energy versus gravity, versus then dark energy versus gravity. And it came out exactly to what we see today, which is about 3 times more dark energy than there is of gravity. And that led me to postulate that it's from essentially matter-antimatter collisions. So all around us at all times, for unknown reasons, matter and antimatter blink into existence, collide, disappear, and leave behind a gamma ray. And it happens everywhere. It happens in the room you're in. It happens at the grocery store. It happens out in the deep space. And the more distance you have between big galaxy clusters, the more odds are that this matter and antimatter will blink into existence, collide, disappear, and leave behind a gamma ray. And so that all those gamma rays put together kind of act like an outward pressure in all directions, because they fire off this way, they fire off that way, they fire off this way, they fire off down there, they fire off towards you, they fire off away from you. They fire away everywhere. And if you get large stretches between these galaxy clusters, the pressure is always going to be out. No matter which way they're going, the pressure is out. It acts like solar wind pushing these galaxies apart. And it comes down to an energy level that is like 10 to the negative 80th electron volts per cubic meter of space. And it just so happens that when you get to around 6 million light years away from each other, that's when the force between these two objects are now greater than gravity. And so that was my senior thesis in college. I published it in an academic journal for the University of Hawaii, but I couldn't get it published in any other journal because I didn't have any like fancy letters after my name. I had the Journal of Astrophysical Particles wrote me and said, "Great paper. If you could get a PhD to be a co-author on this, we'll publish it." I was like, "Fuck you. PhD didn't do any of this work." So it never got published in a journal past that. But that was my theory about dark energy. And I don't really know how I got from Big Bang Theory to dark energy. But hey, welcome to Tangents. Yeah, so now you know how the monkey brain here works. But yeah. Where was I? M. Hobson's asking, do you think institutions will collaborate, time stagger margin calls? Oh, yeah. I think we covered that one already. Yeah, they will definitely try to drag it out as long as possible. So they want to make those margin calls go on and on and on and on and on, so that curve is nice and flat and the price doesn't get too high. Because if the curve gets really high, then everyone's out a whole bunch of money all at once. Joshua Niandao. Do you think the new CAT system being implemented on September 1st will end this and start the MOAS, or will the MOAS need to be over in order for it to be implemented? Oh man, I don't know enough about the CAT system to be able to answer that. I have to read more on it. People mentioned to me, I've read about it a couple of times and it's still not quite fitting in my brain yet. CAT system, writing that down. Yeah, there's lots of things that can trigger the MOAS. I just don't know when or which one will do it. Because everything's just teetering. We've got so many teetering things here. You know, system change, rule enforcement, sweeping margin calls, corporate debt, squeeze in the bond market. What else do we have? COVID, real estate bubble. Yeah, there's like a dozen things that could just tip the balance one way or the other. I don't know enough to give you an honest answer, Joshua. So I'm gonna have to do more research on that. Ross Stock. Maybe when AMC moons, my dad will finally come back from his bourbon and cigarette run they went on 20 years ago. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of us will be getting phone calls from cousins we've never heard of before. Hey, buddy, it's your cousin Phil. Oh, we met that one time when you were 6 months old. Yeah. So, I don't know. If GME moons the way I think it does, I may just turn off this YouTube channel and disappear. You may never see or hear from me again. All right. All right, let's see here. 1:44, so hour 15 minutes in. Okay. Hone de Jesus. Hone de Jesus thinks I say it. Any chance you could guess guest at Starlink with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Oh, that'd be rad. I would love to go there. My sister tried years ago to get Neil deGrasse Tyson to come to the college, and she couldn't get him. She couldn't entice him. She tried and tried and tried and tried. But he's a big time player. Chris Taylor says, I hold several names likely to squeeze. If a mass closing occurs, how long could it take to clear the books for the universe of ultra short stocks? Oh man, that is, who knows? I mean, again, when it happens, it's not just going to be the 500 million plus shares on GameStop that have to be covered. It's not just going to be the billion plus shares of AMC that needs to be covered. It will be hundreds of millions of Metamaterial, Bed Bath & Beyond, BlackBerry, probably 1,000 stocks in the OTC we've never heard of that are currently trading at like fractions of a penny that are all part of that margin and all need to be cleared out. I don't know the mechanics behind whether these clearinghouses will pick and choose and be like, okay, we'll worry about closing these positions, and these OTC stocks, the companies are kind of dead anyway. Maybe we can just ignore those and keep those as FTDs forever or something. But I think if the company's legit, exists, has products, income, outside investment, that those stocks will probably squeeze. And the accounting nightmare that is going to be for all those forensic accountants to deal with it is they're gonna need teams of people to just sit and help clear those books, because the computers oftentimes won't be able to rectify a lot of that stuff automatically. They'll need human beings to like carry the one and do all that stuff. So I think it might be a while. I think it's gonna take a long time there, Chris. Take a long time. That's my summary. Just saw this on. You talk about 010 effing us over. Seems to me it's to prevent all hedge funds from getting margin called at once. Prolonged low squeeze that would rip. I don't know if it's to keep them from squeezing at once, more so than it is to keep the Dow from collapsing as a result of them being all squeezed at once. It's basically a way for a hedge fund that's defaulting on their margin to get their assets taken by another entity who then pays, gives a loan for that amount of their assets that then just gets burned to pay us for them to close their position. I think it's just a way of compartmentalizing the market and to keep the Dow from tanking as a result. And it's a smart move because once you get the Dow collapsing, then a whole bunch of other assets under management collapse with it, which opens them up to margin calls. So it's a way of keeping that chain reaction from just flowing through the market like a nuclear bomb. So we don't need meltdowns. That's kind of what they're pushing for, and it's a smart move on their part. I'm not sure it's going to directly hurt us too much. I doubt it's going to help us, but I don't think it's going to hurt us too much. Freddy Fredberger. William Morgan asking, any chance you get Scrooge McDuck on your show? He knows a lot about investing. Scrooge McDuck also happens to be the densest creature in the world because it's a duck. Duck floats on water, right? But somehow he can dive under gold that's 19.1 grams per cubic centimeter and then swim out the other side and spit it out of his mouth. It's incredible. I mean, if you or I were to dive into a big old pile of gold, we would just splat and that'd be it. Cartoon physics are amazing. Okay. Beats by Jay. To all hedge fund interns, step 1, blow the whistle. Step 2, put all the reward money on AMC. Step 3, make more money than you ever would have at said hedge fund. That seems like a pretty good plan right there. Beats by Jay. Step 4, hide from assassins. Yeah, Jake says we should do Tucson 2022. Let's do it, Jake. That sounds like a plan to me. All right. Daly says NSCC 803 mentions volume limits. Will this affect the peak of the MOAS? Those volume limits, I had somebody message me earlier about that. I read it. I think those volume limits have to do with the average volume of the blue chips that get traded. And so what they're talking about is they take those assets from the at-risk hedge fund and they put them into another account so they don't get flood the market and raise the volume and thus drop the price of those blue chips. So I think those volume limits are what they're referring to. That they can probably let a few of these hedge funds dump their assets, but if it gets to a point where the volume limit is too great, they will start doing the SFTs to dark pool transfer all those assets. So I think that's where the volume limit is. I believe that's what they're talking about. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it has to do with making sure the volume of the blue chips don't go bonkers. Abe West asks, hey Houston, do you think AMC will at $10,000 a share? Probably, if not more. When they're forced to buy, they got to buy at whatever's available. They have no choice. They can't sit around and wait for the price to drop. They got to clear the books now, get this over with. Trading computer turns on. So, yeah, I think that it will go crazy high. Luis Rojas asked, do you believe there is life in other galaxies or planets? Yes. The odds of it being smart life, we talked about this last show with the Drake equation. The odds of it being smart life is about one society per 10,000 years per galaxy. But we've got so many galaxies out there that the odds of it existing at the same time is pretty high somewhere in the universe. The problem is that the closest galaxy to us is Andromeda, and that's 2.2 million light years away. And it's going to be 2.2 million years before somebody in Andromeda can get our television stations. And by the time that happens, we're not going to be around in 2.2 million years. There's no way. So I think the odds of us existing at the same time is pretty low. Brandon Cowells. After MOAS, what is the best way to secure our profits? Will we have a bunch of cash to transfer, but there are limits to reinvest and sell slow? Yeah, I think the best thing to do is take whatever your wins are and to just reinvest it into anything that's inside the brokerage. You might look at when you get your big wins and you're in your Fidelity account or whatever, and it's got some sort of limit on how much cash you can pull out. You might look at a private bank, at a big investment bank, Goldman Sachs, someone like that, about opening up an account, because they're designed for really, really rich people. And you might be able to transfer all of your shares into a big, giant, huge bank that deals with rich people all the time, and that could probably help you pull out more money. But know that whatever cash you have, there's only $250,000 insurance policy on that cash per account. So you might not want to have so much cash at one time in those accounts. But I would look at, do what rich people do, transfer your accounts into rich people accounts because they cater to folks who have a lot of money and spend on things. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Protege's son asking, do you have any thoughts of what I never could say right? Oumuamua was. That is the, and he is probably like, Houston, you've been away from Hawaii too long, you can't pronounce Hawaiian words anymore. I know. That is the weird extrasolar object we saw 2017. So we saw this asteroid passing through our solar system. We were like, oh, it's weird. It's got a weird trajectory. It's coming from outside our solar system. And we looked at it with a telescope, and it was doing this rotation, but it looked kind of like a needle, like it's a needle passing through space. It wasn't shaped like any asteroid we have around here, and its trajectory was coming from outside of our solar system, and it was on a parabolic trajectory. So basically, it's coming from, if you imagine a parabola, like that, right? So the sun is at the foci down here, and it's going around the sun and then taking off. Well, when you pass around an object, you accelerate towards it because you're falling into its gravity well. And when you pass by, you slow down on your way out. Well, this object accelerated towards the gravity well, passed by, and then sped up and took off. That's weird. That defies physics. It shouldn't happen. And so even big-time astronomers are like, that was intelligent life. That was a probe. That was something that was sent to survey. And that object is alien in origin and under power of some kind, because it should not be able to accelerate on its way out of its parabolic path. So yes, I think that is very likely some sort of object from an intelligent species that's out there somewhere. So if you guys want to look it up, Protege Sun has it here. Oumua. Ow Mau Mau. I think it's Oumau Mau. Is the name of the object. Blair Barkley asks, Houston smart shirt today. Thank you. This is all features you can see in London. The tube, other things in London, little posters from back in the day. What brand frames do you wear? These are Oakley metal plate Ducati Signature Series. That's not focusing on the camera at all. These are some of the last glasses that my brother worked on before when he was at Oakley. And these glasses are old as hell. They're 11 years old now. But I keep telling myself I'm going to get my eyes lasered, and then, truck engine breaks or whatever, and I don't have the cash to go get my eyes lasered. But I love these glasses. They're nice, light, they're cool. They got springy little hinges on them. People compliment them all the time. Those are my frames. They're scratched to bejesus, and soon I'm not going to be able to see out of them anymore. Unintentional Invasion asks, what do you think about the fireball UFOs? There's a vid army shooting it with a rocket. I have not heard of that. We've got fireballs that shoot through the sky all the time. I'll have to check out a video on that unintentional invasion. I have not heard of that. I do know that the military has a history of sending out squadrons to go attack things like Venus. There's a great story about during the Manhattan Project, all the air raid sirens went off and anti-aircraft guns started shooting, and then someone like Feynman was like, hey, Colonel, why are you guys trying to shoot down Venus? Because Venus was just really bright in the horizon, looked like a plane coming at him. So we have a history of trying to shoot down celestial bodies. Yeah. Spark asks, what is the more difficult part of asteroid mining? Getting equipment to the asteroid, getting the asteroid to Earth, or getting minerals to the ground on Earth? That's a good question. I think we'll probably make it illegal to bring the asteroid to Earth. Mainly because one little hiccup, one mathematical equation wrong, and we just killed everything on Earth with a giant rock from space going thousands of miles an hour. I think it's likely that somebody is going to eventually invest in a space elevator. So last show I talked about how there's different orbital patterns, that if you have satellites that can go north-south, satellites that can go around. And if you have a satellite that gets out to about the 30,000 mile distance, as the Earth rotates, it stays locked and it's geosynchronous. Well, if we made a 30,000 mile long, very strong carbon nanotube tether, right? And we put a weight on the end of it. So at the equator, as the Earth rotated, we'd have this big giant ribbon. And you can attach machinery to that ribbon and go up and down. So you can put a considerable amount of weight at the end of that tether as a base of operations, truck stop, warehouse, whatever. And you can bring material from near-Earth asteroids as they come by. You mine them, and every couple of years bring a whole bunch of material and then have the elevators bring it down to the Earth's surface and do stuff with it. Jeff Bezos is talking about creating manufacturing in space, so that we actually build lots of things in space where pollution won't matter. That's one of the things he's thinking about. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, because you still have to bring materials to all those people, but you'll have shipments of goods going back to Earth, food and water coming from Earth, things like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of people kind of working on those things. I doubt it will be done via heavy lift rockets. It'll probably be done with a much lower impact device, like a like a space elevator. Space people worry that space elevators will be a storm or something that will knock it off, but at the equator there's not very many lateral winds. Most of the air is rising because it's really hot there, so there's not too much winds from side to side at the equator. Terrorism, probably something not to worry about, but you just pay a bunch of guards a lot of money and they usually keep that stuff from happening. Okay. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff happening with space elevators and other mechanisms to get to and from space in the future. Dan Kwan, designated hitter, yay or nay? I'm all for the designated hitter. Yeah, I mean, why have such an easy out every ninth batter? I mean, there's only a few pitchers that are hitting pitchers. You got your, Todd Helton, is it? I'm thinking of, that was a great hitting pitcher. I think it was Tommy John hit a home run in his first at bat and then never had another home run again. So, I'm all for having somebody who can just rake. You get your Edgar Martinez type players who may have had a lot of leg injuries and can't run, but they can still hit like a dream, and give them a chance to play baseball and let the pitchers just focus on pitching and recouping their arm every 5 days. So I'm all for the designated hitter, because pitching takes a lot out of your arm. People don't realize, like, starting pitchers' arms are like that of a 90-year-old man. They are just destroyed, and basically have to go through 5 days of just sitting and waiting for their arm to rebuild, and maybe doing through a few light tosses to keep the joints moving. But by the time they retire, their arms are toast. So it's let someone else do the hitting. If the pitcher's good at hitting, they can always be the DH as well. All right. All right. So Thanos won this universe. Leilu asks, what classes do you teach and are they online? Oh man, I've taught all sorts of stuff. Right now, I'm teaching through the film school. I teach math in the winter and math in the fall. In the winter and spring, I do kind of science for film majors. And then Edmonds Community College, I teach intro to astronomy and a couple intro for physics classes. And that's for Edmonds College. And right now, those are online, but I'm moving back to in-person classes starting in the fall, supposedly, if COVID stays down, which who knows. So I'm prepared to go back online if I have to. But those are the classes I primarily teach. I primarily teach intro courses because I'm not a full-time teacher, so I don't, move on with the students as they go on. I have other things that are keep me busy. Bullish asks, do you think MOAS can be hindered by intelligent life? Because so far apes are winning. Greetings from Rancho Cucamonga, from Mary and I. Yeah, the apes are winning so far. I mean, the stock price on GameStop isn't $2.57. That means the hedge funds are losing. So I don't know if intelligent life will stop it or not. I was just reading a thing. There's a Dyson Sphere question, and oh man, I wanted to read it. Where'd it go? All right, it's got to be down here. Disney hitter. Cosmic Microwave Background Innovations. Thanos. Okay, here we go. Beats by JS. Houston, is it true that a Dyson Sphere built around Ken Griffin would produce more energy than our sun because of all the toxic radiation his ego emits? For those who don't know, a Dyson Sphere is a theoretical sphere of a class 3 society. I forget who it was who wrote about some sci-fi person was like, oh, this is how intelligent life gets classified. Class 1, class 2, class 3. A Dyson Sphere is a sphere that goes around a star system and absorbs all the energy of that star system and basically has pure energy for the entire life of that star. There is an object that we see about once every 2 years. There's a strange blocking of the light from the star about once every 2 years that doesn't have the signature of a planet. It's got the signature of a whole bunch of debris that's odd, and the speculators out there think it might be the remnants of a Dyson sphere or the beginnings of the building of one. I don't remember what star system it is, but Dyson sphere is this big theoretical sphere that encompasses a whole star system. I don't know how you get enough material to do something that big, but I guess if you are a star child and you're floating through the universe using your mind energy to do everything, you probably have the ability to build a Dyson sphere. So, yeah, that's a Dyson sphere, so you get the joke. Okay. Luis Rojas asks, you mentioned before you did not believe that Egypt's pyramids were built by aliens. What about the ruins of Machu Picchu, Peru? Nope, I think people built it all. People are ingenious, and when they're in large numbers, they can do lots of cool shit. I think Machu Picchu was people. I think pyramids in Egypt were people. I think the pyramids in the Mayan Empire were all people. Even the pyramids in the Mississippi Valley. There's evidence of pyramids out in Missouri that ancient Mesoamericans had built. There are pyramids built by ancient Seminoles in Florida. There's a guy, Matt Matson. I don't know if he's still alive. His YouTube is Florida Gold or Flaw Gold, I think. And he used to do cool little videos about adventures he'd go on. Kind of a pervert, but he made his millions. He found some sort of like Confederate ship sunk in Tampa Bay that had a whole bunch of silver in it and made millions off of that. And then he, had his little private plane. He'd fly around and go mining elsewhere. And flying around the Everglades, he made a discovery of ancient ruins of Native American peoples in Florida, and there's evidence that they had built pyramids there out of the limestone. So it's something that people do. I mean, it's if you go to the beach, your first sandcastle is just a pile of sand, right? Like, oh, well, you can take blocks and make pyramids, and it's a pretty stable structure. It's impressive. It gets pretty high. I mean, 500 feet high in Egypt. And if you are a culture that worships the sun or deities in the sky, you're going to build something that's tall and worship it, right? And use that as a temple or as a pay homage to the powers that be. I think that all of these ancient constructions we see everywhere, that they're built by people, because people are pretty awesome when they want to do stuff. To be great, you have to do great things, and that's got to invest in time, money, and energy to do it. And those are things that last. People go, oh, badass. That's the legacy. That's the legacy humans pass down. So I don't like to propose that a lot of the cool shit we see from the ancient wonders were built by outsiders. I think humans did it. Okay. Frederick Miles just says, debt ceiling. Yeah, it's 26th. So we have until Saturday night at midnight for Congress to raise or suspend the debt ceiling. Otherwise, Monday morning is going to be a bloodbath, the likes of which we have never seen. So they've got 5 days to get their shit together, or the entire global economy is screwed. And if you happen to be represented by a congressman or senator who's saying they're not going to pass the debt ceiling, call them, tell them they're crazy, and get the debt ceiling raised, because basically everyone is screwed if that happens. We're talking hyperinflation, collapse the entire economy, 30% of the workforce out of work globally. Just bad shit's going to happen if you don't raise the debt ceiling. Zanti asks again, what does the low volume in GME trading mean? Thanks for all these great live sessions. Wish I had teachers like you in university. Watching from Romania. Oh, Romania. Hello. I think the low trade volume is specifically as a result of the dark pools. The dark pools are representing 60 to 70% of all the trades going on. And they're routing those trades through the dark pool specifically to avoid the New York Stock Exchange and revealing the actual buy pressure behind the stock. So that's why we're seeing these really low volumes on GME and other stocks at the moment. Freddie Fredberger. Turns out pyramids are everywhere because it was a good way to stack stuff. real tall without rebar. It's true. You know, they stacked cannonballs in a certain way. They all got stacked in pyramids. We just naturally build them. Buckminster Fuller made the what was the name of it? The octagonal truss, which is, you'll see it everywhere. I mean, he invented it when he was like 3 years old, playing with Play-Doh and sticks, and he was basically blind as a kid until they found thick enough glasses for him. And the octagonal truss is, I don't know if I have enough pens and pencils to kind of simulate one. It's 1, 2, 3. So, no. So, I don't know if I have enough fingers either. Okay, so imagine now you're connecting these little three-sided pyramids, these little three-sided prisms, into a system, and then you lock them with other ones all together, and it creates a really, really, really strong truss. And if you go to a concert, you'll see that all the lights are held up with octagonal trusses. You go to stadiums and the ceilings might have octagonal trusses running through them. Those triangular pyramids are really, really strong. And those were invented by a 3-year-old Buckminster Fuller in like 1896 or something. That's pretty crazy to think about. Buckminster Fuller had quite the brain. George, if raising the debt ceiling such a no-brainer, why is it ever debated? Because, all right, here's the thing, and it's getting political. When Republicans are in office, debt will explode in ways that are unimaginable. Think Reagan years. Reagan exploded the debt disproportionately to any president before him. When Bill Clinton got in office, everyone was like, you need to manage the debt. And so Bill Clinton balanced the budget in 1994, right? By one vote. Al Gore is the deciding vote for that. To balance the budget, George Bush comes in office, the debt explodes again. He's like, tax cuts, spending, blah, 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 military, wars. And by the time Obama got into office, the debt was huge again. The deficit was huge. And they're like, hey, you need to do something about the debt, Obama. And he managed to cut the deficit in half. And then Donald Trump comes into office, another Republican, and the debt explodes again. So now that we've got a Democrat in office, all the Republicans are like, hey, you need to manage the debt. And they pretend like the debt matters when a Democrat's in office and not when a Republican's in office. When a Republican's in office, you can spend as much money as you want. Who cares? Do all the tax cuts you want. Who cares? So it's a political dynamic between the two parties. And every single time the Democrats pretty much lose out on the debate because the public thinks, oh yeah, debt is bad. We should probably be financially responsible. But when you push for the austerity measures it takes to be financially responsible, oftentimes it hurts the economy in the long run. The global economy runs on American debt because our treasury bonds are solid investments that we pay on to anybody who has them, and it's guaranteed we pay on those to everyone. So huge sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, mutual funds, institutions, investment banks, you name it, those entities all hold U.S. government bonds. And if you don't raise the debt ceiling, we are no longer able to pay the interest on those bonds and we default. And if we default, the value of those bonds disappear. And if the value of those bonds disappear, everybody loses. You no longer have a pension. You no longer have a 401k. You no longer have a bank. You no longer have a job. Like, it just cascades throughout the entire financial universe. And the thing is that there are certain Republicans who, in order to win office, will cater to people who think debt is bad and the government debt is bad. And they'll say, hey, we're going to try to balance the budget and we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. And you'll be like, yeah, that makes sense. Why would you want to have debt? Well, because the entire economy runs on debt. That's why you have it. So that's why. And every single time it gets close, 2011 almost didn't pass, and the United States saw its debt rating reduced for the first time ever as a result of it coming down to the wire. And if it comes down to the wire again, we can see that happen, and that can shake up the market pretty bad. Adam in the Windy City. Have you seen the massive open interest on VIX call options for August and September? The VIX rarely gets longed. It's a bad omen looking at the OI, option interest. Open interest, sorry. Yeah, the VIX, so when the Dow does this, the VIX does that. When the Dow does that, the VIX does that. So you're looking at basically a way of hedging against the market. And so if there's a massive open interest for August, September, that means there probably are institutions betting against the market right now in big numbers. That's like HYG puts are kind of the same way in that. There's other ways of hedging against stuff. So if you are dumping money into the VIX, you're betting the market's going to collapse and you're going to win off of that. So, yeah. I totally missed a chat in here while I was yakking. Oh, Matt Newton, happy birthday. How can I buy shares in Sears Pink Sheets? Fidelity didn't let me buy more shares in Sears, but Schwab did. And I think you have until September 1st when it gets put on restricted trade and you can no longer buy shares whatsoever, which tells me that the bankruptcy and asset allocation will probably be done sometime around then. Get It Got on Reddit is the person whose DD should read on that. He posts from a whole bunch. He collects info from all over and does some great work. Basically showing that the value of the Sears shares versus their actual assets is anywhere from 40 to 100 times greater than what the share price is trading for. So if you buy the share at 22 cents, it might be worth $22 in just assets when they have to sell off their assets. So you can buy them on Schwab. You have to let your money clear for like 3 or 4 days before you're allowed to buy anything on the Pink Sheets. So I don't know if you can get on TD Ameritrade because I don't have a TD account. But yeah. Sheep Ducking Cow, where would you recommend to obtain reliable, most up-to-date dark pool info? Dark pool info, I'm not sure if any of it's reliable. I think Ortex just kind of shows the volume that's in dark pools, but doesn't show the prices or anything like that because they aren't required to display any of that information. So I don't know. We get glimpses every once in a while from like monthly reports about volume of the dark pools, but beyond that, I don't know if we have any way of getting up-to-date information. Sorry, I'm not more help on that. Okay, and then there's a question here. Sean Alexander, man, I'm enjoying this. You're all over the place. Thank you and your audience. Yeah, you guys feel like a pinball bouncing around in here. All right, it's 2:17. I have to make a Costco run today because I'm out of paper essentials. And also, I think the mask mandate's coming, and I need more of these things because I've burned out my last supply of them. So I'm going to go to Costco and see what I can get. So I've got 15 minutes or so left on today's show, and I might be able to do one tomorrow for like an hour, a short one. But we'll definitely do one on Wednesday at 12:30. But I'll try to do an hour show, maybe noonish, 12:30ish if I can tomorrow. Okay. All right. I'm missing some questions here, but I'll try to get to everybody I can. Dan Kwan, Wade, any interest in doing an NFL fantasy league with subscribers? It's time to finally put up that vast intellect of yours to good use. I can be commissioned if enough people are in. I actually had somebody message me the exact same thing this past weekend. It's that to do one through Fangraphs. I have never established a fantasy league. At most, I've given my roommate recommendations on who he should play. But I haven't really had the chance to participate in a league. But it'd be fun if I have the time to do one, or just hopefully I can just set a team and forget it and not get hurt by bye weeks or something. I did enjoy watching The League. That was a funny show. But yeah, when would the league have to be set up by? 1st September, somewhere in there, or before the end of August? Ooh, all right. I'll have to look into this more. Not so much crap I got to do. All right, but that'd be fun. That'd be really fun. It'd be like king of the hill or something, king of the castle. Got 14,000 subscribers now, so that would be pretty rad to have a lot of people participate in something like that. JS, hasn't it been proven that the Mississippian cultures had contact with the Mayan cultures, hence pyramids? I don't know yet. I don't know enough about ancient Mesoamerica. I still have yet to take that class in my master's program. Um, I don't know. They're connected. I mean, uh, people traveled, people walked, people went places, people did trade with other cultures. I don't know how much of the Mayans made it to Mississippi or Mississippians made it to Maya, but I'll have to learn about that. Dr. Stonk asks, Houston, do you think people will still buy the Robinhood IPO after all the shenanigans? Probably, because, you know, there might be the 4 million of us, 5 million of us that are in the ape community that won't, but then there's, huge hedge funds and mutual funds and people that don't believe us, anything we say, who will. I have someone saying, don't forget to hydrate. Thank you, boss. Whew. Okay. Static Dean asks, how long does Metamaterial have to pass on our dividends? Are the hedgies continuing to try and run them out of business? I had several hundred shares of Metamaterial, 11 plus average now, and 3,000 at 4.8 average. The dividend itself will be coming from Torchlight shares, and I'm not sure the timeline on that. It just depends on how long it takes to sell all their oil patches. What the timeline I think is on delivery of those preferred shares that are the placeholders for the dividend, and delivery of the shares that were shorted prior to the CUSIP change as a result of the merger. So that's kind of what we're waiting on, is like that T35 date that's somewhere in there that is sometime in August, which could force a whole bunch of recall of those shares. Susie Chi, oh, how's it going? Hi, Susie. It's going well. About to go to Costco. Woo! Perhaps get a hot dog that gives me horrible burps. Israel Rodriguez, you're going for 100,000 K a share with AMC. What should we be keeping track of during the squeeze to see if those high numbers are possible or not? Volume. The FOMO will hit and push the price probably to pretty bonkers prices. What the difference will be is the price when forced liquidation happens, when forced buying happens, the price will probably jump to regions that retail has no business entering. If we're talking AMC in 2 days goes from $100 to $900 a share, that's probably not going to be retail pushing it to $900 a share. It's probably going to be forced buying by trading computers that are doing that. And that's when all those limit orders are just going to be gobbled up as they come. Just gobbling them all up. And you'll want to pay attention to the volumes when that happens. So you're going to be looking at, let's say that there's 2 billion shares that they need to buy of AMC. You're going to be looking for when the price gets to stupid levels, when 2 billion volume in shares happen, whether it takes over 1, 5, 10, 12 days. And that's where we'll see the prices in that peak zone, is during that time. So that's kind of what you got to look at. For GameStop, probably $1,000 a share might be the bonkers level. That's now the trading computers doing all the work. And we'll have to look for 500 million volume in shares trading from that point on to see what the peak's going to be. Okay. Pow Tamau, what's your thoughts on NSCC 803? I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier. A lot of people are scared that it's going to keep the MOAS from happening. I think it's more a way of keeping the entire market from collapsing as a result of the MOAS. It's just a way of taking those assets under management and essentially giving them to a financial institution via a no-bid exchange of goods. So generally, the brokerage will have to liquidate the assets and dump them on the market, right? And that dumping of all those assets drops the price overall because the buy pressure goes down and the sell pressure goes up. Now, if they manage on dark pool to give all those assets to somebody else in exchange for some cash that will pay off some of their obligations, then you can keep that stuff from flooding the market, bringing down the Dow. And if the Dow doesn't get brought down, then it won't affect other hedge funds along the way, causing a bigger chain reaction. So I think NSCC 803 and 010 are those means of doing that. Moo Poolin, good to see you. Is it possible we won't see a gamma squeeze anytime in the near future? June 18th was deferred. Can't they defer it again? Yeah, they deferred on from the June 18th by doing those swaps, those debt swaps. So I don't know. They might do it again. There's no one stopped them the first time. Who's going to stop them the second time of swapping that debt? So yeah, we might see it happen again. But if you're just moving debt around, that catches up with you eventually. It catches up with everyone. People want their money eventually, and if you don't have their money, they're going to make you get them their money. The banks can't last forever. Just keep lending on margin and not getting anything in return to all these hedge funds. They're going to need that cash eventually. Okay. Protege Sun asks, during MOAS, when we have all these halts as they need more liquidity, will price drop each time, then have to start back at much lower amounts than where it had been? Probably. So if hedge funds liquidate, they buy pressure and then they're out of cash. And then banks take over and buy pressure and they're out of cash. And then the DCCC takes over and then they're out of cash. And then it goes back to the banks when they get their Federal Reserve money. So we might see brum, 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 or it could go up and we'll see waves at the top before an eventual peak. If you look at the graphs from the VW squeeze, it doesn't just go whoop, whoop. It has lots of peaks and valleys for about 8 days in there before it hit its max and then went back down again. Okay. All right. All right, I got 3 minutes, folks. Let's do one more question here. Gorilla Glue asks, why don't we use on-the-fly hydrogen or water-powered cars? Zero emission has been possible for decades. Why electric if they really care about the Earth? That's true. The hydrolysis it takes, though, to create the hydrogen needed uses a lot of electricity. So you're going to have to do it in a green way to be able to make it neutral, which means you're going to have to do it via solar, wind, or hydroelectric, maybe tidal energy, wave action, something like that. Because you have to put a charge across water to release the hydrogen atoms from the oxygen atoms, and then you suck the hydrogen atoms out without letting them expose to other oxygen atoms and making a giant explosion. And then you can store it into hydrogen containment chambers. There's cool ones that are like these porous metal things that get static bonding of the hydrogen to the insides, and you can make a really dense amount of hydrogen in them. So it takes a lot of energy to make the hydrogen used that then is powered in a hydrogen car. There are different systems that can kind of use the same system. So rather than doing hydrolysis, they use electrolysis, and you use the salts and liquids. So you have like a membrane between two liquids that are flowing different directions, and electrons get exchanged between them. So it becomes this kind of like running battery until you've equalized all the salts between them. And that's the Quant eSport limousine that Bosch built a few years ago. Did that, and they called it salt water. And people thought, oh, you can just like pour seawater into the car and it runs for 300 miles. It's not quite that. It's a specific fluid, water fluid that has a certain amount of electrolytes in it that operates. But it kind of works on a similar principle. It doesn't use burning anything. Doesn't produce any direct pollution. But that liquid is still made in a mechanical process and takes energy to do. So you have to make sure the energy source for making those things comes from a green source, or at least one that doesn't directly impact the carbon in the atmosphere. So, all right, I got 1 minute. I can do one more. let's see here. Where's one? Where's one? Go scooting through here. That's the MLB Fantasy League. There's got to be one here I missed. Owen Murphy. Hello, Houston from Ireland. Owen is how you pronounce my name. It's spelled Eoghan. Sounds like old Gaelic, huh? I said it funny on your last shows. I will butcher a name if you give me the opportunity. Hieroglyphics of helicopters. What's that all about? I don't know about hieroglyphics of helicopters. I'll do research on that, Owen. I don't know. Where are they? Like Nazca lines or rocks with helicopters on them? I don't know. I'll have to look that up. Since I don't have an answer to that one, maybe we'll have to find one here. it's one more good question to close out on. Okay, it's from Limit 22. In control squeeze, this will be manipulating the Red Sea and prevent an upswing play potential. Yes, government holding securities from being sold, so that will prevent dip buy opportunities. Two wrongs do not equal a right. Yeah, I mean, if the government steps in and controls this, then definitely that is, an outside manipulation of the market, and I think I hope that the SEC and the powers that be realize that if they do that, it will hurt the potential for outside investment inside the United States. That if we don't allow the market to act like a market, then there's no reason people will be investing in what we have anymore, because they'll be like, hey, if they're going to cheat us anyway, then you know what, I'm out. I will play with the Frankfurt market. I'll play with the Tokyo market. I will, mess with crypto and gold and whatever else. And they're just going to stay away from the United States. And if we lose a significant portion of that 40% outside investment in our markets, then we're toast. The corporate debt bubble goes pop, because there's no longer the buy pressure that can even maintain the prices that those stock buybacks have been doing. So yeah, I hope that the regulators are discussing this stuff. Like, hey, if we actually stop this squeeze, or we keep it from going the way it should, and seen as us stepping in and manipulating it, then we lose confidence in the market as a whole, and the U.S. is toast. Of course, we talk about this stuff, but they don't pass the debt ceiling by midnight on Friday. Everything's toast anyway. So there we go. Susan Chi asks, what is your horoscope? My horoscope is physics and science. Technically, I'm a Gemini, but really, I should say, according to the charts, I'm a Gemini, but according to science, I'm a Taurus, because the Earth wobbles in its orbit. As a result of this wobble, it takes about 26,000 years to do one wobble. So the North Star changes. Right now, the North Star is Polaris, but in 12,000 years, it'll be Vega, and we'll wobble some more as we spin like a top. And the star sign system was created around 5,000 years ago, and there wasn't 12 star signs, there was 13. There was a star sign called Ophiuchus, but 13 was unlucky, so they got rid of it, but it still exists. And the wobble of the Earth has made it so that when you're born, your star sign is whatever sign is behind the sun when you're born. And when I was born, this Taurus was behind the sun, so technically I'm a Taurus, and I can't remember how it shifts about 6 weeks for everybody. So 6 weeks before what your actual birth date is, that's your actual star sign. And then some people are actually Ophiuchus. So there you go. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. That was a great show. I'm going to try to maybe I can do like an hour tomorrow. I do have some obligations to meet some people for lunch that are visiting from out of town and stuff. But I might be able to do one for an hour around noon or 12:30, and then regular show on Wednesday at 12:30. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day. I'm going to enjoy a Costco hot dog and a nice long drive. All right. Good night, everyone.